Welcome back to another edition of the podcast, and tonight is our Game Week 39 National League preview and predictions, proudly sponsored by Cards Accepted. As always, I am joined by my co-host Paul Franklin, who will be buzzing after Tuesday's result. Big result, of course, for you away at Altrincham. But yeah, Paul, how are you doing?
Yeah, doing all right. Yeah, I'm a little bit happier now than I was at 3:45 on Saturday, having to commentate on Wealdstone being 3-0 down at half time. So, yeah, listen, it's been a good week for Wealdstone, and we go into a game with Woking on Saturday full of hope and confidence that we'll get another 3 points towards safety.
Yeah, I suppose it's that time of the season, isn't it, where it's just about getting points on the board. I think for Wealdstone as well, you look at the position at the moment, it must be so frustrating because you get a big win like that away at Altrincham, and I guess it's the same for everyone else who's around you in the table. They must be so frustrated at the moment because sides are around each other keep winning towards the bottom at the moment. Maidenhead won. I think obviously Wealdstone themselves won. There were a number of teams. Boston won. Braintree won. I think the sides from 5th to 8th actually lost to sides in the bottom 8, which of course is kind of good for sides inside the playoffs, but it's not too good for yourselves, is it? When you're desperate to escape this relegation.
Getting 3 points was massive because Altrincham are going for playoffs, and to get 4 points out of the last 2 games is really satisfying. Didn't play particularly well in the first half. The second half on Saturday they were superb, and I watched the game on the TV stream on Tuesday night rather, and they weren't. Neither team were good. Altrincham were bang out of form. They are really struggling. The pitch isn't brilliant, so that really didn't help the way Altrincham play. And Wealdstone were just very dogged. They got a very good goal. The ball went down the outside. Dom Hutchison with a bit of quality, and Alex Reid showed what he can do in front of goal, and he managed to sneak the ball in that near post. So, but then it was just a case of defending, and Matty Kozlow hit the bar in about the 98th minute for Altrincham, so all our hearts are in our mouths. But to come away from those 2 games with 4 points was superb. And you're right, Luke. I mean, it could have been better, but every team, I think, apart from Maidenhead, won. Every away team won on Tuesday night. I mean, that's not heard of, is it? Very regularly, 6 away wins, and it almost felt like your team and other teams around the playoffs, no one feels like they want to take that 6th or 7th spot. They're sort of leaving it for each other, and so yeah, a funny set of results in the week, but it sets it up nicely, I guess. Going into this weekend and another set of fixtures that there's 6-pointers in there. There's teams will lose points, and at one point on Tuesday night, Wealdstone was 2nd from bottom, and by the end of the match, they're 5th from bottom. So it's changing on almost a goal by goal basis.
I don't think anyone saw the result coming at the Shea either. Halifax, probably prior to that result, the most informed side in the division, losing to Dagenham, who hadn't actually won a league match since the 1st of January. That was absolutely mental, wasn't it?
It is. Yeah. I mean, what would you have said, Luke, being a Halifax fan? You'd have probably put your hat, your mum and dad's house on the fact that Halifax would get some points, and I mean, no one saw that coming. They got rid of their director of football or someone, the person influential in the recruitment earlier that week, and that seemed to give them a real sort of lift. The fans, especially on social media, were pleased that chap had gone. So, whether that resonated through to the squad, and the squad went out there and got an excellent result away at Halifax. I mean, that's not hard, an easy thing to do. And alongside that, Rochdale end up losing 3-2 at home to Boston. And they've
3-0 down as well in that game.
And when you look at it, they've lost. That's only the 2nd loss in about 10 or 11 games, and it's incredible, really. So, yeah, a really funny set of results. It keeps you on the edge of your seat and keeps you on your toes in terms of a fan, and thinking that you're comfortable in one position, and just one goal or one result really flips it on its head.
Yeah, it certainly does. I know for myself, I wasn't actually at the game, so I can't really comment too much apart from statistics and highlights that I saw of the game against Dagenham. But it just sounded like we've gone backwards to how we were playing before Christmas, I suppose, where we've we've started slow, let aside, take an early lead, and then we've struggled to break them down, which is a little bit disappointing, particularly against Dagenham. But I suppose I did give it the kiss of death with some of the points I've made. I think I said on the previous podcast, I can't see where Dagenham are going to get the next win from. I shouldn't have said that when my own team's playing them on the following Tuesday. But no, prior to that, I think we can all agree, we looked at Dagenham and we thought they were doomed. And you looked at the remaining fixtures, and I'm not saying that they still won't go down, because, I don't think sides around them did them any favours at all with them winning. But for them to pick a result out like that's going to give them a massive amount of confidence, isn't it, at the moment?
It is, because I think that the challenge Dagenham have got is they played 38 games, and the teams around them, Wealdstone, Boston and Woking, teams that they're sandwiched between, have all played 36. I mean, I guess that when Dagenham look at that, the Wealdstone have to play Boston twice, Wealdstone have to play Woking, so vice versa. So there's going to be points dropped in and around that almost that little mini league of trying to get that second, third, fourth relegation spot. But yes, no one saw that coming from Dagenham. Nobody. You might have said that Boston would beat Rochdale because of the form they're on, but being at Scotland that's a different kettle of fish. So, what did we say, Luke, a few weeks ago, that Boston are relying on other results now to help them up? I think what they've gone and done is incredible. I think Joe from Off the Line blog said on the X today, is he up for manager of the season, let alone manager of the month, if they get that great escape? Because that has been one hell of an effort, and Wealdstone have got them twice in the next few weeks, so I'll see them up close in terms of how well they're doing and how they play. And it's mighty impressive that they've managed to sort of claw themselves out of what was looking like a really dire situation.
I think the majority of the credit for that club has to go to the manager who's come in. Of course, they had an awful first half of the season. In the previous 11 games, they've picked more points up in those 11 games than they've done, I think, in the previous 23 games of the season, or 25 even, which is just, it's ludicrous. I think most of us thought Boston were down and out. I certainly did. Even when they picked one or two results up, I thought they'd left it too late. But looking at them now, it's in their hands to actually survive this season, which is just mental. And I genuinely think this will be the greatest escape that we've ever seen in the National League. And to be honest, I've actually seen in English football, I know I'm only young, but I can't recall a side escaping like Boston do. Of course, they still have to do the job. They're still actually doing the bottom four. But, if they carry on how they are doing, the momentum that they've currently got, and there's no reason to suggest why they can't survive. It's just interesting, because you look at the squad, and I genuinely thought it was just down to probably not having enough quality in that squad to survive. Yet a new manager's come in, and it's just been a complete different story. I know they've made one or two additions, but I think it's more of a case of the overall squad improving since the new manager's come in, more than additions that they've made.
Yeah, without a doubt. As I said, I've not watched them play, but he's clearly got them playing to their strengths. They're not a team full of names, not a team full of, I would suggest, National League experience. So they're playing to their strengths, and it's an old thing that Luke, winning becomes a habit, and if you start to get a bit of momentum, straight away you're gonna see the results and the performances and the confidence. That all sort of builds, and then the fans on the terrace then get behind the team. That you can sort of feel that, you can feel it get better and better, and then you end up going into games thinking, well, we're not going to lose today. We're playing that well, and they're going to think about that on Saturday. They're playing Hartlepool. I think I analysed it just before we came on air. Hartlepool, one of only 3 teams that haven't won a game in the last 5. Gateshead and Yeovil being the other 2. So they're playing a team bang out of form. They're right in form, so they're really going to go to that game and think we're going to get another 3 points, because Wealdstone or Woking are going to drop points. And then Wealdstone play Aldershot on Tuesday, someone's going to drop points, and all of a sudden, they start to close the gap again. So, fair play to Boston. They're doing what they have to do. They're worrying about themselves, and the results around them are helping them a little bit, but they deserve that little bit of luck because of what they've done.
It was like I've mentioned, it was a very strange game week for, the 4 sides, I should say, from 5th to 8th. That actually, it's 5 sides, I should say, actually, shouldn't I? The 5 sides that lost from 5th to 8th, 4 sides. The 4 sides that lost from 5th to 8th. If you actually look at those all losing, it was very, very odd to see them all lose. You might see 1 or 2 of them lose, particularly considering the opposition. They're all playing sides in the bottom 8. That none of the sides that any of those teams actually had are actually safe from relegation. Probably Braintree are the most safe, who Gateshead lost to. But suppose the only games that didn't particularly surprise me that much was maybe Wealdstone getting something at Altrincham, yet that was still a slight surprise. And then I think Braintree as well, because you look at Gateshead currently at the moment, they're on awful form, and it's still not confirmed that they're going to be able to hang on to a playoff spot this season. But like I've said, even if they do manage to hang on to a playoff spot, for me personally, I can't see them causing any other team in the playoffs any issues if they do manage to maintain a spot the way they're playing.
No, you're right. And I think, the teams you talk about, the Halifaxes, Altrinchams, and Gatesheads of this world, when on Tuesday night, the only solace they can take is everyone else dropped points. Mm-hmm. So they're almost in a similar position they were before they started the game. Yeah, they'll be kicking themselves in certain situations where they probably could have got, more points and be better off. But the fact they're all dropping points. I think the team that probably won out of that the most will be the likes of Oldham and Halifax, because they're sitting nicely in the playoffs. Gateshead, Rochdale, Altrincham, even Southend are looking at, and Eastleigh are looking at, thinking, happy days. That pulls us, as in them, closer. If you look now, we only said a few weeks ago, Southend, is it just a bit too far, Luke? Well, if you look at it now, at 53 points, they're only 3 points off of Rochdale. They're only 6-7 points off of Gateshead. But so I think they've got to be looking at thinking, if we keep going, however many games they've got left, 6, 7, 8, 9 cup finals, let's go and try and win every one and see where it takes us.
I feel if I was Southend, I'd look at that and see that there's a massive opportunity there. You can't dispute Eastleigh. For me personally, I just think they keep shooting themselves in the foot too many times. But as for Southend, they've come into form at the right time. I'd really fancy their chances of potentially going up if they could finish inside the playoffs. And they got a good point against Forest Green. I think the only concern for them is they probably draw too many games recently. And if they turn those draws into wins, which they probably could have done if you look back at those games, I suppose, now they could be sat inside the playoffs. But, Gateshead, for me, I'm not particularly convinced about them. Altrincham have certainly on a bad run of form recently as well. As for Rochdale losing in midweek, even Halifax, I suppose, they've been on great form. Maybe it was a fluke result, but we're going to obviously, of course, see that in the next couple of weeks when Halifax are back in action, whether this is the start of a bad run for them. Hopefully, for my sake, as a Halifax fan, it's not the case, and it was just a bit of a freak result and we can bounce back. But, of course, Halifax have got Oldham at the weekend, which is a good game, I suppose, for the likes of Altrincham, Gateshead, even Rochdale and Southend, who will be looking up the table to try overtake one of the two sides.
Well, yeah, you're right. I mean, Southend have got Eastleigh, Luke. So, a win for, say, Southend will really kick Eastleigh out of the picture, because they'll get 3 points clear of Eastleigh with that game in hand. And Altrincham are playing Barnet at home, and listening to the commentary, the Altrincham commentary, which I would have to say is very, very good on Tuesday night. They were sort of worried and fearful for what the score might be, the way Altrincham were playing, and the fact they're playing Barnet, who are champions elect, as they suggested. So there's still some twists and turns even after this weekend to see where that sort of 4th to 7th, who takes 4th to 7th, and who's likely to either drop out or stay in.
In terms of football news involved in the National League off the field, of course, Halifax recently, my own team, it's been announced that Ken Davey, the owner of Huddersfield Giants, of course, a rugby team, they're going to actually take ownership of the actual stadium itself, the Shea. Now, Paul, from an external perspective, I'm sure you're probably not as aware as, for example, Halifax fans are on this, but I'm sure you'll have heard things about it. Of course, the Giants are now going to take over the Shea. They've come across and basically said they're going to improve the Shea, a new hybrid pitch. They're going to hopefully improve the facilities there. There's pros and cons to everything. the major concern is there's news, isn't there, that you can't have two rugby clubs playing at a football stadium and be allowed in the EFL. Ken Davies come out and said, trust me, to the football club, which gives me the assumption, basically, that he's saying that they're going to try find a way to get into the Football League. The concern for Halifax fans at the moment is if Ken Davies does take over the football club, which is more or less confirmed now, we might not actually be allowed in the EFL next season. And it could be another case of a Gateshead of last season. And I felt for Gateshead fans last season, but I would be absolutely fuming if we finished inside the playoffs this season and we got a statement from the National League and Halifax like Gateshead had last year. Other cons as well is the fact that when it's only a temporary, Ken Davies coming into temporary, own the share. He's going to own the share while Huddersfield Giants temporarily play at Halifax. And then they're going to build a stadium back in Huddersfield for the rugby club. So then he's going to sell the football club back, the stadiums back to the football club. Yet the football club probably don't have the financials backing to actually be able to take full ownership of the share. So, yeah, what's your overall thoughts on that? Do you see it as a positive, or are you a little concerned, I suppose, for the future of FC Halifax Town?
I get, Luke, I suppose you can go on it two ways. You'd be very cynical and not like the idea of the buying it and selling it, etc., and having two teams play on it, and maybe you can get into the EFL. I guess you just got to be positive around it and say, well, what have you had up till now? I know you yourself personally, Luke, and you're very passionate.
On the field, it's good, but I suppose the issues is, you're well aware, Paul, I've spoken about quite a lot. Off the field, it's probably not the best. The facilities, the match day experience, the pitch has been postponed all the time, doesn't help us either.
So I think, and as I say, you've passionately spoken about what the football club needs and where it's almost standing still, and it needs more people through the door. Because of that, it needs better facilities. The facilities might drive people to come. That whole match day experience. So I think from your perspective, I guess from my perspective, and being a Wealdstone fan, we're desperate for some proper investment in the football club to take us to that next step. We are where we are, and we're sort of keeping afloat in terms of what we've got, but we need that investment. And there's a lot of clubs like that, and Halifax being one. And I think you just got to take it for what it is for now, and trust those that are in charge of the football club, in charge of the local council, the Huddersfield Giants, all these people, just to say, right, the best interests are for everybody, not just for a club, a team, an individual. I suppose then you just got to suck it and see and hope to God that it doesn't come back and it'll be I told you so scenario. Actually, it's working out very well, and Halifax are pushing on to playoffs, and the shade's been improved, and you got 2,000 to 3,000 in the stadium now rather than 1,000 to 2,000, wherever it may be. So I would be encouraged by it, and I would just sort of sit there and go, right, we just got to trust them. And as long as they're open and transparent, and I guess they give the communication on a regular basis to what is happening and why they're doing it, that might allay some fears and appease you guys as fans as well. So I think that's important too. So what you don't want to do is start doing this sort of very cloak and dagger and not be sort of known as to what's happening until the last minute. There's going to be certain things they can't tell you because of contractual agreements and everything else. So yeah, I would just trust them, Luke, and hope that this is an improvement on what you've been asking for over the last couple of seasons.
There's a lot of ways to sum up my mood about it at the moment. It's quite hard to explain those moods. I'm anxious about the future. I'm curious, but I'm also slightly excited, more for the reasons that you stated. At first, when it first came about, I was over the moon, but I wasn't educated on the term that actually you can't have three teams playing at a football stadium if you want to be back in the EFL. That's the concern for me, because the Huddersfield Giants are likely to stay at the Share for 3 years, 4 years. That means I'm going to the Share for 4 seasons where we can't get promoted into the EFL. For me personally, I don't see the point. I can only see us going one way, and that's relegation, because I don't think we'll be able to attract players. We struggle to attract players now. Never mind if we don't have the offer to be able to get into the EFL. So for me, that's the concern for me. And then also the fact that afterwards, when Ken Davey does eventually move his Huddersfield Giants back to Huddersfield, he's going to be looking to sell the share. And unless an investor comes in during that time, our current chairman simply can't afford to be able to take full ownership of the share. So for me personally, I am slightly concerned, but I suppose it's hard to tell. It's hard to judge at the moment. Another frustrating factor is the fact that there's been very little communication to the fans by the council, by the football club. Something actually came out on BBC West Yorkshire on Twitter. They actually came out and announced that the takeover is fully agreed, yet the football club stayed silent until 2 days later and then basically told us that we don't have any more information that we can disclose to the supporters. And for me, I think of people like my uncle, even my dad. My uncle's probably been going to the share for about 50 years now, if not longer, to be honest. My dad's been going for probably nearly 40 years now to the share, and they've been supporting this club for a very long time. And I think the club owe it to fans like my dad, my great uncle, other fans as well surrounding the football club to at least disclose what's actually going on within the football club. And that's the frustrating factor for me overall. Oh, to add on it, Paul, also we come to the comment section before we of course.
Listen, just keep the faith, Luke. Keep the faith. You know, Halifax are doing well on the field at the moment. Hopefully that will build off the field and you'll have a team to really get behind and push on for next season.
Let's have a look at the live chat then. I did also hear about Gateshead potentially getting some new ownership, but I don't really want to discuss too much of that tonight because I haven't actually seen that from a reliable source yet. And once I do see it from that, then of course that's a topic we can discuss on the podcast. But I don't want to discuss something like that when it could just be made up. But Lee's come in and said, "Yo, evening, lad. Wish I had all them always on me coop week." And then evening, lads. Massive weekend. Ipswich could go down and have probs the worst season ever in their history. Barnet could win the league. Oldham is their last hard game. 6 out of 6 away wins on Tuesday. And for Maidenhead, we've also had Alan Devonshire's Black and White Army. Yeah, of course, they lost in midweek to Aldershot. That was a bad result for them, particularly with all the sides around them winning as well. It does feel like this could be the year where they finally drop. Keith's come and said, "Well done, Luke and Paul. Oldham will paste Halifax. Alex Reid will keep Wheelstone International League." And then we've also had AJ who's come in, Paul.
He says, I'm being honest, if Forest Green play like they did on Saturday, I could see Oldham get a playoff semis. Oldham's last 3 games are poor due to Regan Linney, and after Wheelstone, I said he's non-league Rodri. They seem to have. They were dropping off before Linney was suspended, but they definitely missed him on Tuesday night without a shadow of a doubt, and they're going to miss him again at Barnet on Saturday. So, tough times for Altrincham, tough times for Gateshead. They're hitting that form right at the wrong time, and they could be the ones that suffer.
The difference between your Halifaxers and your Altrinchams for me is the fact that when Halifax players can get injured, they can deal with those injuries. Yes, we probably don't have the same individuals going forward like Altrincham doing Newby and Linney, but whenever either of those are injured or suspended, it seems to have a major detrimental effect on them, which it has done in recent weeks. They've struggled to score. We've also had Chris Wright, who's come and said, "Hi, Luke and Paul. Good luck to Halifax on Wrexham AFC. Looking good for the championship. 2 years ago in the National League, Wrexham was in." Yeah, it wasn't long ago, Paul, when me and you were covering Wrexham in the National League. And then we've also had Colin tonight, who's coming.
Yeah, hello, Colin. Gateshead might have a consortium coming in. It won't make much difference this season, but could be very good for the next season if it happens. Yeah, I believe Victor Anachabi, the ex-Nigerian Everton striker, is part of that consortium. As you say, Luke, there's not been too much, a bit more speculation, anything around that. I think Gateshead have just got to lick their wounds and get to the end of the season and see where it takes them. But interestingly, they've got 2 ex-managers waiting for a new job, and I know that Gateshead fans have suggested that it's not sort of clicked with the new manager, Carl Magnay. So, it'd be interesting if a new consultant comes in, whether they think they're going to change direction. Could they entice one of their old managers back? It's all speculation, it's buts and maybes. But yeah, only a few weeks ago, we were talking about Gateshead really managing it well, the changes they have on a constant basis. And it really has they've hit a slide right at the wrong time.
Some Gateshead fans have actually come in the comments, and I will come to those comments shortly, but they've actually stated that it's been in the local newspaper. I was searching for quite a while. I must have been searching the wrong sites, and I couldn't seem to find anything. This was probably a couple of days ago, and I've been quite quiet on Twitter recently, so I must have missed that. But yeah, if this does go through, this could be life-changing news for the future of Gateshead, because on the field it's been great the last couple of years, I suppose, for Gateshead in terms of being competitive towards the top. But playing at the current stadium facilities, financially it's been very frustrating, with the players that they've lost and the managers that they've lost. If a new investor comes in, it will put money into that squad. And being able to retain the players like they have at the moment, that's going to be huge news for the future of Gateshead Football Club. And someone's also said the pitches, or the quality of pitches, I should say, don't help how teams play. The only thing I will say is the same for both sides. Suppose it depends on the team as well. For example, Gateshead, if they're playing on poor pitches, the way they like to play football, it's not going to have a good effect on them. Whereas your more industrial sides will probably thrive on playing on pitches like your Halifaxes and perhaps even your Rochdales at the moment. And they've also had John, who said, evening, gents, bit of a topsy-turvy Tuesday night in the National League. Yeah, it certainly was. And then we've also had who's come in tonight. Keith has said, sorry, Luke, but if Halifax, if Huddersfield takeover cannot go in, if Halifax come to the share, Huddersfield come to the share, Halifax are not get into the Football League. Yeah, that is my major concern. We've had Jake, who's also come in tonight, said, Paul.
Yeah, Boston about to do a great escape, incredible run of form to get themselves in a position where survival is possible. I think Woking could be in trouble with all the results going against them Tuesday. Jake, it's hard really to sort of predict because, as I said, at 3:45 on Saturday, and Wealdstone were 3-0 down against Eastleigh and were bereft of any ideas, any confidence. They look doomed. And then, it's 0-0 on Tuesday night, and they're second from bottom. They win 1-0, and they're fifth from bottom. I think it can happen with Woking. Woking play Wealdstone on Saturday, massive game for the two of those clubs. So, yeah, listen, Jake, you put your neck on the line, say Woking could be in trouble. They well could be. There's so many teams down there that still could get sucked in or stay where they are. So, yeah, it's a real interesting end to the season for that end of the table, because I think the top end's almost sorted, isn't it? So the interest is in that bottom end.
Yeah, it certainly is. I don't know, maybe the playoffs, I think there could be a few turns yet before the season comes to a close. We've also had Jeremy, who's in tonight. He said, hello from Poland. Welcome. I do love it. You all know I do when we get people from overseas tuning in. Of course, we get Chris from Australia, who's an Oldham fan, and also, well, the two Chris's actually are both Oldham fans. One's from Australia and one's actually from France. So, yeah, we do love it when people tune in all over the world. And we've also had F1 Mark, who's coming in and said, Aldershot, last 6 games, won 5, drawn 1. Yeah, they're on great form themselves at the moment. And then Neil's coming, Paul.
What a player Leon Chambers Parallon is. Alongside Keenan Forson, we are developing a young and very quick midfield that can carry the ball. Can the Strimpers make the playoffs? We've already discussed that, haven't we? I saw Leon Chambers Parallon play for Slough a few times in the National League South. They're a local team to me, so I take advantage of going down there occasionally. And I remember speaking with Scott Davis, the Slough manager, and saying he was, they did very well to pick him up. He got badly injured, or was injured in the academy at Oxford United, and they released him. And Scott picked him up and just said, he's a great kid. He's got a good future, and he's proved that now. He's stepped up from National League South to the National League seamlessly, and it's great to see because there's a lot of talent in those regional leagues, and the National League seem to be able to sort of pick the best of them.
Bailey's also come in tonight and said, big up lads, up the Tamworth. They're on excellent form this season. I genuinely thought, even when they were doing so well in that first half of the season, I've said all along, they'll fall away, particularly towards the final 10 or so games at the end of the season. With them being part-time, it'll catch up with them. But they keep getting stronger and stronger. They're currently in the top half. The part-time, they were the favourites to finish rock bottom at the start of the season. We've talked in about Tamworth in a very positive way all season, but we're quite rightly so, to be honest.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, as I say, I saw them seen them twice now this season, and they did a job on Wilsane twice, and they play to their advantages, Luke, and their strengths. There isn't one name in there that would roll off the tongue as being a National League player, and that's no disrespect to them. They've all come from the National League North, National League South, the Northern Prem, all teams, and they've adapted excellently. And I know their manager Andy Peaks. He's openly admitted that's what they have to do. They play to their strengths. They've got a plastic pitch at Tamworth, and it probably isn't even the best surface for them, let alone any other team. So they've done amazingly well, and they've got to be very proud of their achievements. Obviously, they had that good cup run. They played Tottenham on the telly. That's not to be forgotten as well. So that could have easily distracted them and derailed them, but I think it probably helped them in their confidence in what they're able to do, and it's gone on from there. And they've got Gateshead on the weekend, another winnable game when you look at who they have played and beaten in the last few.
As well, for Tamworth fans at the moment, keep your eyes out, because we've got some big news about Tamworth that's coming up on the podcast, a potential interview. So keep your eyes out for that one. We've also had Jake who's come in tonight, and he said, Luke, do you think it is concerning with the losses Halifax have had at home to the lower sides when it seems you're in a good run of form? Fylde lost at home and then Dagenham. Do you see it as a one-off? For me personally, I think you've got to look at the patterns, and it's not just this season, it's over the last couple of seasons under Chris Millington. Our home form hasn't been the greatest. We've relied quite heavily on being strong away from home. What I will say is, if you actually look at our victories at home, they seem to be against the better sides in the division. And for me, that suggests that it's the way that the lower sides are coming to the Shea and us not being able to break them down. For example, Dagenham will come to the Shea. We're defensively strong, tried catching us on the break, and we couldn't break them down. Another example, Fylde probably came to the Shea and kept catching us on the break. We couldn't break them down. There's a number of teams. Aldershot, another one, got an early lead. Then we couldn't break them down for the full 90 minutes. Solihull Moors even. There's clearly a pattern here that's occurring at home. Whereas you look at the home games that we've won this season, we've beaten Forest Green at home, who are currently third. We've beaten Barnet at home, who are currently looking like they're going to get promoted this season automatically. We probably should have got something out of that game versus York. I thought we were the better side on the day. There's a number of games this season. I think we've got a pretty good record against sides around us in the table. It's our defeats have actually come to sides towards the bottom. So for me, yeah, there's clearly a pattern occurring there against a weaker side. So for me, I suppose if we can clinch onto a playoff spot this season, it is a positive that we're playing against sides who we've got good records against. It's actually just defeating these sides to actually confirm a playoff spot, because the remaining fixtures for Halifax all do seem to be against sides towards the bottom, which on paper probably look like a healthy set of fixtures for a side that's currently on decent form. But knowing Halifax, it's probably not. I'd rather us be playing York away and Barnet at home, if I'm being honest. But no, we've probably come to a point now where we will get on with the predictions. We are half an hour in. These are the scores on the doors. Paul, once again, you've won this game week by 2 points. A pretty good game week for both of us. I got 9 points, and of course you've got 11.
Yeah, we did all right, didn't we? It was. I think there was a couple where we got the result right, which always boosts it. But I think between us, we scored a point in most games, so we weren't far off what the scores were. But as I say, it's very difficult to predict in terms of how many goals are going to be scored and how teams are going to play. But I've clawed it backwards. It's 6 points now, Luke. So I'm getting a bit closer.
Of course, your travel company as well sponsor the Predictions League. Would you like to give them a plug?
Yeah, we do. Yep. So with Tracy and my wife and I run the PTF Travel. So anyone who's got any holiday requirements, short haul, long haul, weekends, multi-centres, anything, please just give us a shout. We can service near enough every holiday at any time of the year across the globe. So it'll be great to have any of you guys on board as customers.
Jeremy's actually coming, and I think he probably is new to the podcast, but he's actually said, is there a history of predictions or just point numbers? Do you understand that? Because I don't really get it, to be honest.
I think what Jeremy's asking for is, do we have it listed what the predictions were, or we just tally it up? I mean, from Jeremy's point of view, we score points for getting the score right or the result right. If we get the score right, we get 3 points. If we get the result right, we get 1. So if we were to predict this week that Sutton and play Dagenham and Sutton win 2-1, and I predict 2-1, then it would be 3 points to me. And if Luke predicts Sutton to win 3-1, he'll get 1 point. So yeah, there's no history of the predictions in terms of listing down, Jeremy, but we just tally the numbers up each week or each time that we do a prediction show, and that's what gives us the final score.
Yeah, it's certainly been an exciting, and it's been, I think, overall a good addition to the podcast. It's made it a little bit more exciting for us too, as well. It makes us think more about our actual predictions too. Also, there's nearly 70 of you watching at the moment. Please remember to like and subscribe to the podcast. If you're new, we're live every single Thursday covering the Vanarama National League. We also do a number of interviews as well around players, managers, fans involved in the National League, even owners at times as well. I could say we've had 2 football owners on if you class Mark White as one, and of course Southend's owner as well. We've interviewed Dean Brennan this season. We've interviewed Tommy Widrington in the past. We've interviewed a number of managers as well, of course, a number of as well who've gone into the Football League since, including Stuart Maynard and Pete Wild. If you'd like to become a channel member, it's just £2.99 a month, and you get early access to all those interviews when they do air. And I'm proud to say we have also got another big interview lined up next week, so keep your eyes out for that one too. Anyway, let's get on with the predictions league themselves, well, the predictions, I should say. Starting things off with Dagenham versus Sutton. After getting a win like that for Dagenham, I suppose our overview of this game totally changes compared to how it would have done if Dagenham didn't win during midweek.
Yeah, yes and no. I mean, Sutton had a good come from behind win against AFC Fylde away. Midweek, that's not an easy place to go. Sutton don't really have a lot to play for, and Fylde have got everything to play for. So it does show that even in those games, teams are wanting to win, and I think that will be the same this time round. And Sutton are at home. It'd be interesting to see whether this is a platform for Dagenham to push on, or whether that was a one-off, that win at Halifax on Tuesday night. But I've gone with the Sutton 2-1 win. I'm just not convinced Dagenham are going to keep up that good form.
Oh, you've got to back them after getting a win like that away at Halifax. I've gone for a 1-0 Dagenham win. I think defensively, even the games that they've lost recently, they've been a little bit better. They kept Barnet out for 90 plus 5 minutes before Barnet got a late winner. Winning in midweek, a clean sheet versus Aldershot, who was themselves on decent form at the moment. They've only lost 3 games, I think, in 20 for them. So you have to say, Dagenham at the moment, there's certainly signs of improvements, and it is crucial now that they build on this. They need to get something away at Sutton because they've won at Halifax. Are we going to see whether that was just a fluke result or whether this is the start of a change for Dagenham, a start of a good run that's going to get them away from that relegation zone and bring them towards safety? Because for me personally, I think there's enough players in that squad to be able to survive, considering some of the sides around them. I think if you look on paper, you look at, for example, Boston, I know they've improved recently, but if you look at the individuals in that side compared to the likes of Dagenham, you've got the likes of Dion Pereira, Rees, there's a number of players in that side. Midfielder, what's he called? He was at Woking as well, who they've got. There's enough players, I think, for me, for Dagenham to be able to survive. Josh Umera as well, going forward, is a goal scorer himself. So, yeah, I'd like to think Dagenham can back that up with a result. And as for Sutton, they don't particularly have too much to play for. Yeah, guys, I know a lot of you have got your predictions in. Please remember to put your predictions in the live chat, guys. Don't be afraid to do that, and count how many points you've got on the previous game week, and you can see if you've beat myself or Paul on next week's podcast. 1 point for getting the result correct, and 3 points for getting the score correct. As Paul mentioned, if my result comes off against Dagenham winning 1-0, I'll get 3 points, whereas if Dagenham win 2-0, I'll only get 1. And if Dagenham draw or lose, then I get 0 points. But yeah, we're going to move on to the next fixture now. Fylde versus Forest Green. a bit of a potential banana skin when I look at this game for Forest Green. They've certainly not been on the best of form for a side that's in a title race in the previous couple of games themselves. Of course, still picking up a couple of wins, yet they've only won 2 wins. They've only got 2 wins, I should say, in the last 8. Yeah, I think the title is done and dusted now, but they were in that title race until probably about 5 or 6 games ago.
No, you're right. And they've just got to try and keep a good sense of form going into the playoffs, because you don't want to be going into those crucial games not playing particularly well. And I think you're right, Luke. You know, Fylde have got, at this point, way more to play for than Forest Green have. Forest Green aren't going to slip out of that top 3, I don't suppose, unless there's an absolute miracle that Oldham win every game and Forest Green don't. So, yeah, I think they're comfortably where they are. You know, I don't know what they're like with injuries or players in or out of form, but they're going to have to try and get as much as they can back for the playoffs. Whereas I think Fylde, you know, they're going to be very disappointed after the Tuesday night. They didn't capitalise on being, you know, 1-0 up against Sutton, and the fact that all those teams, apart from Maidenhead above them, won. So they're going to be really, you know, they're second from bottom now, and at some point they were probably out of the bottom 4. So I think you're right. It's a banana skin for Forest Green, if you like. There's more on it for Fylde. I put down a 1-1 draw purely because I don't think Fylde are in particular. You know, they're not particularly great. They're not particularly consistent. You know, they lost the last 3. They couldn't hold on to a lead. You know, so Forest Green aren't scoring too many. I can't see this being a hugely exciting game. I've gone with a 1-1 draw.
Such a Fylde thing to do, isn't it? To be able to beat the likes of Altrincham, Halifax, even Southend, and then go and lose to Ebbsfleet away. You know, that was only Ebbsfleet's 2nd win all season, and that's a very bad result. I know no game in the National League is easy, but playing against an Ebbsfleet side that had 1 win all season prior to that is probably as easy as it gets, and it's a must win. Never mind just getting a result out of that game. So for them to lose, they have to be kicking themselves after that, because they were in a great position. If they'd have won that game, they'd have probably have been out of the drop zone. Whereas now, sides above them keep winning. And I don't think the result in midweek's done them any favours whatsoever. As for this one, Fylde do tend to have a pretty good record against sides in the top 7, beating the likes of Halifax, Altrincham, Gateshead, and obviously getting a point against Gateshead and Oldham as well. Mentioning as well, Southend, another side that they've defeated this season. For me, I see a draw for this one. I see a high-scoring 2-2 draw. Forest Green, not too much to play for. They've only got 2 wins in the last 8, drawn a lot of those games. So, yeah, I'm going to go for a 2-2 draw. Let's have a look at what everyone else has been saying in the live chat too. Remember to get your predictions in, guys. This is what the viewers have been saying. 1-0 Fylde, 2-1 Fylde. We've had 2-0 to Forest Green, 1-0 to Forest Green, 3-1 to Forest Green, 2-0 to Forest Green. Colin, stick on this game. Don't be moving on to the next one. He's given his Aldershot Ebbsfleet prediction as well. So get all your predictions in, guys, as well, as we do proceed into the next couple of predictions. Next one that we're moving on to, Aldershot Town versus Ebbsfleet. I can only see one result for this one, and I'm going for a 4-1 Aldershot win. Aldershot have picked up 20 points in the previous 10 games. To be averaging 2 points a game, for me, is excellent, and they're safe. They should be safe now from dropping down this season. I think fixtures for them, they've been a little bit unkind to them overall. They've had a lot of postponements, which has probably put them in a false position, a little bit lower down than they actually were, probably should have been, depending on how they were actually playing and the results they were getting. As for this one, coming up against an Ebbsfleet side, I know they won on Saturday, but that was at home. They haven't won away all season. So I'm going to go for a 4-1 Aldershot win. How do you see it going?
I've gone with a 3-1 Aldershot win. You know, it was only, 3 or 4 weeks ago, we were really fearing for Aldershot, weren't we? And I think they've sort of hit that FA trophy. They hit the FA trophy and they won in that. And, you know, just done amazingly well. To an average of 2 points a game, any team's going to be happy with that. And they get 3 points on Saturday, which is likely to happen unless Ebbsfleet pull a rabbit out of the hat and get an away win. They're going to be at 49 points, and we've sort of suggested around 50 points could be that marker to really be safe. So, yeah, fair play to them. And they're at home as well. One of the better playing services, I think, in the National League at the moment. So that's going to help them. I can't see anything other than a win for Aldershot. And I've gone with just one goal less than you. I've gone with 3-1.
Yeah, it is looking like it's going to be around 50 points to survive this season. So anyway, anywhere from Sutton at the moment, you'd probably say are more or less mathematically safe. So Aldershot probably need 1 or 2 more wins to secure safety for next season. Now, moving on to the next one, Braintree versus York. We speak about banana skins. Rob, who obviously comes on the podcast on a regular basis, he's mentioned about it being the silly season, and you see a lot of freak results. We've already called one this game week. We've failed getting a result against Forest Green. I could see this as a potential banana skin, but I do think York will have a little bit too much for Braintree. I'm going to go for a 2-1 York win. Do you see a banana skin in this one?
Not necessarily a banana skin. I see a 2-2 draw. I think York are going to be a little bit like Forest Green. It just feels like they've both given up on hope of chasing and catching Barnet, and quite rightly, Barnet are 11 points clear and don't look like they're ever going to lose another game this season. So again, have York got lows to play for? Have they just got to try and play into a bit of form and get some injuries back? Will Hinshelwood rotate if he's got that ability just to freshen the team up? I have no idea, but they're going to want to again be in that good form. I think they're going to want that home advantage, which they'll probably get in the playoffs. But Braintree, 50 points, as we just said, Luke. They're at 45. They've played 38 games. They played a couple more than some of the teams down there. So they can't rest on their laurels just yet. They do have to just keep pushing forward. And I think being at home will help them. And I think they're going to be good for a 2-2 draw.
Moving on to the next fixture then now, Eastleigh versus Southend. A big game in terms of the playoff race, you could say. 2 sides that are hunting down a playoff spot this season. Do you see it being a realistic possibility for either of the clubs?
Southend definitely. Eastleigh not so much. And that, I saw Eastleigh on Saturday and they didn't have to do a lot to go 3-0 up. And that sounds very funny, but they didn't have to do an awful lot at all to go 3-0 up against Wealdstone. They didn't look like they were particularly good, if that makes sense. And I think, their match on Saturday against Wealdstone was a microcosm of their season. The inconsistency they showed was incredible. And they were lucky not to lose that game on Saturday. Wealdstone had a chance in the 95th minute to win the game and didn't quite make it. So I think Southend are the ones that, if they could turn draws to wins, like you said, Luke, they're going to be knocking on the door of Altrincham, maybe Rochdale, maybe Gateshead. But I think, they've got to really have a good tilt at this to try and win their last few games and get in that playoff places.
I think the winner of this will be within a shot of finishing inside the playoffs this season. I think if Southend particularly, I think if they win this, for me, I'd say they're right in the heart of finishing inside the playoffs, particularly if Altrincham, Rochdale, Gateshead, Halifax, any of those lose on Saturday, which is a realistic possibility, particularly when Halifax and Oldham are both playing against each other. As for Eastleigh, I suppose for me, this is a must win. I think if they lose this, they're certainly out of the picture for me. I think it's unrealistic. Southend have a very good record against Eastleigh. This season, I think they've played each other a fair few times. They've played in the league, the FA Trophy, I think, as well. And Southend have won both times. At Eastleigh as well in one of the FA Trophy game. And I think Southend will be able to get a hat-trick against them this season and win once again. And I'm going to go for a 1-0 Southend win. What's your prediction, Paul?
I've gone for exactly the same. I can't see loads of goals. The one thing Eastleigh did have on Saturday, which I wasn't aware of, and I don't know whether you guys who are out there watching this and listening to this, but Paul McCullum has got a very, very long throw. And they utilised it. They utilised it on Saturday and scored a goal from it. And when he wasn't taking a long throw, Tyrese Shade, who's their centre forward, who's very lively, can take a very long throw. So, anyone who's playing Eastleigh Southend on Saturday, be aware of what they use as a fair tactic. It's like Wrexham have done in the past and Tommy Tonks does at Tamworth. So, Yeah, unusual to see like one of the best strikers National League have seen in the last few years actually taking long throw-ons and not being in the box himself. So, yeah, they'll utilise that. I can't. They did score 3 on Saturday against Wealdstone, but we did gift them. They didn't really work hard for them, and I can't see them. They didn't create too much, if that makes sense. And I think Southend will win 1-0.
No disrespect to Wealdstone, Paul, but when you look at Wealdstone's position at the moment and you look at Eastleigh looking to finish inside the playoffs, to be 3-0 up against the side in the bottom 4 at the time and to only get a point out of that game is disappointing for me and just shows to me that Eastleigh are way too inconsistent. And Southend at the moment, probably not winning as many games as they'd like, but they're a very hard side to beat. I think they have been throughout the season. And I can't see Eastleigh getting anything out of this game. So I'm actually going to go for a 1-0 Southend win. I think they've got stronger as the season's gone on. Moving on to the next one, Gateshead versus Tamworth. Certainly a contrast of styles, a contrast in form as well for both sides. And surprisingly, it's Tamworth on the better form out of the two sides.
Yeah. Like I said at the beginning of the show, Gateshead are one of 3 teams that haven't won in the last 5, and Gateshead have lost the last 4. Them and Yeovil got the same record. Even Ebbsfleet have got a slightly better record because they won 1 and not drawn 1 of the 5. So, yeah, I mean, Gateshead are really, really struggling, aren't they? It's just not happening for them at the moment. I wouldn't want to be playing Tamworth at any time of the season because they're such a robust, strong, physical, industrial side. That they'll be well happy to go to Gateshead on that big open pitch and play it, and toss the ball into the box with Tommy Tonks and get it forward and put a team under pressure that are bang out of form. So, I mean, the one thing that I suppose does help Gateshead a little bit, although it's not helped much recently, is that they're at home, but they have lost away. They have lost to Braintree and Maidenhead, both at home in the last 2 games.
And drop points to Fylde as well at home.
Yes. I've gone for a 1-1 draw, and I think purely because Gateshead have got to try and arrest the slide somehow. It's Tamworth, albeit they beat, they scored 4 against Wealdstone and 3 against Dagenham in recent weeks. They're indifferent in how many they can score. I've gone with 1-1 draw, but it could easily be a Tamworth win. But my gut says it's going to be a draw, so 1-1.
Gateshead have averaged less than a point a game in the last 14. They've picked up 13 points in those 14 games. Is a playoffs? Have they done enough already to confirm a playoff spot?
When you look at it, I mean, they're lucky that Altrincham slipped up, Rochdale slipped up, Halifax slipped up because they could easily get 1 win, Halifax get a loss, and all of a sudden Gateshead are back in 5th rather than 7th. So, I could easily see them going back up the table slightly, but it's more likely they're going to slip out of it, Luke. I think at this rate, with that record that they've got, them and Altrincham are going to be the ones that are potentially fighting for that 7th spot, with Southend coming up on the outside to try and nab it from them. So, yes, it's a tough run-in for Gateshead, and they need to start getting some wins as soon as they possibly can.
I'm just trying to work out what is projected now to actually clinch that 7th spot at the moment. For me personally, I think Gateshead certainly it's certainly not done and dusted. Then they could easily fall outside of the playoff spots. It's usually about 70 points, isn't it, to secure a playoff spot? Sometimes a little bit more than that. You'd very rarely get inside the playoffs with about 68 points, 69. So I think this year we're about 73, 74. Gateshead have got 8 games left to get 12 points. Usually, you'd say, yeah, Gateshead, they should be able to do that. But if you look at the recent form, you look at the plays they've lost as well. I don't think it's a case of Gateshead underperforming recently. I think it's a case of them not being the same team because of the players that they've lost in Jan. And that's why I could see them falling out of the playoffs this season.
Yeah, you're right. It's catching up with them, isn't it? They're on to their sort of their 3rd manager. God knows how many the changeover of the squad and the loanies and those that have been sold and returned to parent clubs. And at some point, it was going to catch up with them. And it seems that it's sort of happening now. But it's in their own hands, Luke. I guess that's the best thing, isn't it? It's in their own hands, and it's them that have got to do their best to arrest the slide they're in. They're not reliant at the moment on other results. It's in their hands. If they can improve their form, they've done enough up till now to still be in there. But I really struggle to see them sort of doing anything but slipping out of it with the way that, that Rochdale have shown decent form. I know they lost on Tuesday. They're showing decent form. Southend, if they can turn wins, it draws into wins. The pressure is on them and Altrincham, Gateshead and Altrincham to retain those positions that they're in.
I have to say, if I was Southend or Altrincham at the moment, I'd be specifically looking at Gateshead as a side that we could overtake. Halifax losing in midweek was a bad result, but I think you're going to have to see them go on a bad run for them to slip up now. I still don't think it's done and dusted. I'm not getting carried away whatsoever. We've got a tough game away at Oldham, but I don't think, even not being a Halifax fan, I'm yet to look at them at the moment as a side. Yeah, they're going to slip out. I don't think there's enough to suggest that they will. Oldham, I think, have probably done enough and then have picked a couple of good results up recently in the last week or so. And then, of course, Rochdale as well. I know they lost in midweek, but it's a bit like Halifax, to be honest. They've improved recently, so maybe that was a bit of a freak result, but we'll have to see how they do it in the upcoming weeks. So if I was Altrincham or Southend, I'd really be looking at Gateshead as a side that we could overtake because they're in a bad run of form. You can actually look at them and actually look at the reasons why, and that's because they've lost a number of players. They've been quite unfortunate with the amount of injuries they've had. It's just so unsettled there at the moment, and I could certainly see them falling out of the playoffs. And like I said, even if they do manage to pull that out of the bag and finish inside the playoffs, for me, I can't see them doing anything in them, if I'm being totally honest. In terms of predictions, Tamworth on great form at the moment. They're probably the worst type of side that I think Gateshead would want to play at the moment is a really industrial side. I'm actually going to go for a 2-0 Tamworth win for this one. I'm pretty impressed with Tamworth at the moment. We'll move on to the next game. Hartlepool versus Boston. Similar story between the two sides. Boston, a little bit of a footballing side, to be fair. As for Hartlepool, very industrial. The results in terms of form, Hartlepool on a horrendous form, Boston on playoff form, if not top 3 form. They're averaging more than 2 points a game recently. I can only see one winner in this game, and it's not for the 15th place team. It's for the side sitting in 21st, and that is Boston winning 2-1. Hartlepool don't have too much to play for. It's very sour there. Yeah, I can only see a Boston win. I'm going for a 2-1 Boston win. How do you see it going?
Luke, there's no point dwelling on this fixture any more than you already have. I've gone for Boston to win 2-1, purely because Boston are showing brilliant form, like you said. Hartlepool got absolutely nothing to play for, and their form is absolutely dreadful. So, I think we're being kind to Pauls to say it's only going to be 2-1. It could easily be more than that, the way Boston are playing. So, yeah, a Boston win. It pains me to say that, being a Wealdstone fan, because I need them to sort of slip up, but I can't see that happening, and I think they'll get a win at Hartlepool and win 2-1.
Yeah, Hartlepool as well, winless in 8. More points in the previous 11, like I've said, for Boston than they've got all season. So I can only see one winner for this game. Moving on to the next one, Maidenhead versus Rochdale. Maidenhead are desperate to go on a good run of form. They need one of those runs of form that they have shown this season at times to get out of the drop zone at the moment. Otherwise, they will drop down, and it is looking highly likely that this could be the year that they finally do drop. Is this really the sort of fixture that you'd want? Rochdale at home, currently inside the playoffs. Overall, Maidenhead do have a better record, I suppose, against the better sides.
No, maybe last season before, I'd be saying yes, Luke, but not this season. Rochdale, yes, they lost. They lost to Boston, but 2 teams banging form, weren't they, on Tuesday night? Boston and Rochdale. Rochdale were in form. Maidenhead aren't, and I think they've just got too much firepower. They brought Jay Bird in from Exeter, who's scoring some goals. They've got threats. Yeah, I can't see Maidenhead winning this. I've gone with a Rochdale 2-0 win.
I've got Rochdale 2-1. I'm very concerned for Maidenhead this season. You've mentioned it there. Historically wise, you look at Maidenhead in this division, they've been renowned for pulling the results out when they need to, but against the better sides like the Rochdales. This season, that has not been the case. You've mentioned Bird there, who's come to Rochdale. He's been excellent since he's come in. He's just given them that added firepower going forward that they already, had in Cairo Mitchell. But, he's an excellent player. I'm trying to think, they had a young centre-half, who Kingdom it is, who's coming defensively, and he's been a breath of fresh air defensively when they've actually had a number of injuries in that department. And yeah, you look for Maidenhead for me. I'm not saying they're down yet, but sides around them are picking results up. And I just don't think Maidenhead have the quality this season compared to those other sides to survive. And when you see sides like Boston come out of the frameworks to actually put a case together to survive and be on, playoff form, I suppose Maidenhead just have to, they're probably feeling sorry for themselves overall, but it's not a time for that at the moment. But I just think Rochdale are going to have a bit too much. So I'm going to go for a 2-1 Rochdale win. Next game then. Game of the game week for me personally, yes, Oldham versus Halifax. Some will class this as a derby, some won't. It'll be a big game, this, I think, for both clubs. Halifax will probably take a fair few for them. And as for Oldham, it's a big game in terms of the league as well. Of course, Halifax win, they'll overtake Oldham. So Oldham will not be wanting to drop out of the 4th and 5th place at the moment because they will be wanting that home tie, I would have thought, in the playoffs. But yeah, an opportunity for Halifax, isn't it?
Oh, huge opportunity. Proper northern affair, Luke. I think the only disappointing thing is that it'll probably be quite a nice weather and, a spring light. It's not going to be that proper.
It's meant to be raining. My mate said today.
Oh, is it? Oh, there you go.
Where I am, it's not too far from. I'm in Huddersfield, which isn't too far from Oldham. So apparently, it's meant to be raining. I've heard.
Oh, there you go. So it might be a little bit of a greasy surface and everything else. So yeah, proper National League match. This, isn't it? By sort of two relative heavyweights of the league, those that are experienced in it and those that should be sort of maybe doing better in it and everything else that we've talked about over the last few years with these two teams. But I don't see many goals. I don't know what you feel, Luke, but
yeah,
I have gone with an Oldham win. So apologies to John, the Oldham fan, who did sort of say to me, like, don't back us to win. But I think Oldham at home, big crowd. Halifax coming off the back of a poor loss to Dagenham. Yeah, I mean, this could be one of 3 results that, I think, but I've just gut feel says that Oldham are going to just scrape it, Luke, 1-0. So hopefully that means that Halifax will win for you, because that's normally what happens when I predict a Halifax to lose.
Yeah, good. Hopefully you haven't cursed us this week like you have done in the past. I remember the last game when it was Oldham v Halifax last season. It was the start of last season, and I backed Halifax to win 2-1. And I got so much stick for saying that. And then when we won 2-1, oh, that was amazing. That was my favourite prediction I've done on the Predictions League. So hopefully it's more of the same. I suppose I won't get the opportunity to do that. I've actually gone for a 1-1 draw. Of course, the two sides have played each other twice already. At the Share, they drew 1-1 actually, but they actually played each other in the FA Cup, and Oldham absolutely tonked Halifax 4-1. Yeah, I'm going for a 1-1 draw. I am a little nervous. I think we're playing Oldham at a bad time. They've suddenly come back into form, getting a point against Rochdale, and I think they did win on Saturday as well. So yeah, I suppose we're playing Oldham at a bad time. But yeah, I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw. I think we'll be able to bounce back against Oldham and get a point there. And to be honest, I think for both sides, maybe not so much for Oldham, but I suppose it's not the worst point in the world. Halifax around Oldham in the table. Halifax can't overtake them on the day. Halifax get to maintain that 5th spot against Oldham. For me personally, overall, I don't think it'd be an awful point. I think both sides will be looking to win it though, but I think it'll be a 1-1 draw. Moving on to the next one, Solihull v Yeovil. We get to this point of the season, there's always meaningless games. These aren't so many this year. We're quite fortunate that a lot of sides have got something to play for, but I suppose this is one of the games where there isn't really too much to talk about.
No, not really. I think from Yeovil's perspective, they've dropped off a little bit from early promise, and coming up from the National League South, they've done very well to adapt back to this league. So they should. Some would say they've got a great infrastructure and they're full time, but it does take time to get back in this league. And we've seen teams drop from the EFL go straight through. So, I think from Yeovil's perspective, and from the fans' perspective, and from Mark Cooper, managing the side, they just need to just pick up a few favourable results just to finish the season on a positive rather than a negative, because it's overall it's positive, but you don't want to be going sort of end to the end of the season, we lost the last 15 or whatever it may be, and we could have maybe done a bit more, and fans are then wanting the manager out, or whatever it may be. So I think from their perspective, that's what they're looking at. Solihull, Matt Taylor has to improve their fortunes a little bit more than he already has. They sacked Andy Wing and made a statement to say that they would want to get someone in who sort of felt they were more aligned to what they want, etc., etc. And they bring Matt Taylor in, which is an odd choice. So, Solihull are going to have to want to try and pick up results similar to Yeovil. So, although there's nothing to play for, I think it's just it's that bigger picture of next season and beyond. So, yeah, not the most entertaining game, I don't think, of the game week. And because of that, I've gone with a 1-1 draw.
I'll go for something different in terms of the predictions league, because I think I did actually say 1-1. Solihull on the better form, yet you actually look at those games, and I know you can only beat what's in front of you or get points against the sides that's in front of you, but they've drawn to Hartlepool, who are on horrendous form themselves. They've beaten Ebbsfleet, who have nothing to play for, and prior to that game had only got one win all season. I think they actually played Ebbsfleet at home as well. And then they drew to Sutton, another side that have got nothing to play for. So, yeah, I think picking 5 points out of those 3 games is still okay, I suppose. As for Yeovil, not on the greatest of forms. 4 defeats in a row for them. I think both of these sides just want the season to end now, and they can rebuild for next year. I think they're 2 quite ambitious clubs. I think next year both set of supporters will be looking at both the sides and thinking we need to be aiming for the playoffs this year. As for this year, they've got nothing to play for. As Solihull are on the better form at the moment, I'm going to go for Solihull 2-0 win, we'll say. Actually, no, 1-0 win, we'll say, to Solihull Moors. Moving on to the next one. Your side, Wealdstone versus Woking. Woking have had, I believe, 2 defeats under Neil Ardley since he's come in. So overall, good form. Those 2 defeats were actually against Barnet and York. So I suppose no shame in those defeats. They're coming up against a Wealdstone side that's desperate to survive this season. You've mentioned to me, Paul, that you feel if Wealdstone did go down into the National League South, we wouldn't see them again. So I suppose this season, you have to just be hopeful that you can survive. I think if you look at Woking's position, you'd say this is a winnable game, but you look at Woking's form since Neil Ardley's come in, and you'd have to say this is a very tough game. I've actually gone for a 0-0 draw.
Fair enough. Yeah, it's not often Stones don't let a goal in or score a goal. So
yeah,
I've gone with the Stones 2-1 win. Gut feel is that they'll build on what they did on Saturday, what they did on Tuesday night. The fact that at this moment in time, Luke, Wealdstone's next 4 out of the next 5 games are at home at the Vale. And when you look at the teams they're playing, Woking, is it a winnable game? I would suggest it probably is. Aldershot, maybe a few weeks ago, would have been more winnable than it is now. York is away. Then you got the likes of Boston coming up. So there's some really winnable games on paper for Wealdstone. They've just got to be a bit more consistent in terms of way they play. They've got to make sure now that they put in a performance for 90 minutes, similar to what they did at Altrincham, rather than that 45 that they did on Saturday against Eastleigh, and 20 minutes here and half an hour there. And bloody hell, they went to Tamworth and Rochdale. I don't think they even bothered turning up. So it depends the sort of Wealdstone team that turns up. If it's the one of the last week, they'll be okay. If it was one of the week before, we're doomed. So I've got a good feeling there's going to be real good buoyancy in the camp, and I think Woking will succumb 2-1. But it's going to be a tough game.
Yeah, Woking, they're just very good defensively. I don't know. I suppose I understand why you're saying I'd be surprised if Wealdstone don't either score or concede. Defensively, you've conceded an awful amount. And going forward, I suppose you've got a fair amount of firepower in the likes of Reed, Ashford, Kretschmar, just a few names to mention there. You've also brought in a new striker as well, haven't
we've
you?
got Tyler Walker from Lincoln.
That's a ridiculous sign if you get the best out of him.
Mustafa Carriol, who's, although 36, absolute monster. I mean, he can carry the ball very, very quickly on the left wing. So there's some real positives there, like you said. Defensively, just need to be that little bit cuter. Kept a clean sheet the other night. Woking are very hard to break down. That's what they've been since Ardley's been there. They've had Junior Marias recalled back to Notts County. They brought in Shamar Lawson today from Millwall, an attacking midfield player. So they're looking to shape their squad a little bit differently. I believe that they may be a little short on numbers. See how that affects them on Saturday. So it's got all the ingredients to be a good 6-pointer, and I'm just hoping Wealdstone come out of the end of it on top.
Moving on to the final fixture of the game week. This is, of course, on DAZN. Altrincham versus Barnet. For me, Altrincham, it's a huge game. They're on a bad run of form. Is this the type of fixture that they'd want? For me personally, yes. They've done well against York this season. They've done the double over them. They've done pretty well, I think, against sides around them in the division overall, despite probably losing to Rochdale, I believe. And I think that's about it, about sides around them. I think they beat Gateshead away. Overall, they've got a good record against sides inside the playoffs. For me, everything's in favour of Barnet, but I think this is the perfect type of game that Altrincham need. It's really hard to explain why, but I don't know, I've just got a gut feeling. Everything's against Alty. Regan Linney's out. Barnet, maybe, they know that they're probably very much done. They're going to probably go on to win the league now. I think Altrincham will see this as a free hit. I think they won't have too much pressure in terms of actually winning this game. And I think that'll actually go in their favour. So I actually think Altrincham will pull it out of the bag. This is by far Barnet's toughest result now until the end of the season overall now. And I think if Barnet win this, then they'll be well on their way. Well, they already are, to be honest, well on their way to claiming automatic promotion this season. But maybe just to make it a little bit shaky, I could see Altrincham winning this game. But like I said, if Barnet win it, then the rest of the fixtures for them, it'll be easy. I think Altrincham will win this. I don't know why. I think 3-1. How do you see it going?
3-1, blimey.
Yeah. Don't ask why, but we know the National League, Paul. We know there's some ridiculous results, and Altrincham are the sort of side that couldn't go and beat Barnet, I think.
Yeah, we do know the National League, but what I also do know is I saw Altrincham play on Tuesday night, and they are struggling with injuries, and suspensions. Regan Linney being out, but their commentating team, rattled off at least 6-7 players who are injured. Their pitch isn't brilliant. It doesn't help them. Barnet are very much.
Barnet, though. The pitch won't help Barnet, though, will it? I suppose.
But Barnet are a little bit more direct and on the front foot. They like to play in the final third. Listen, I can't see anything other than an absolute drubbing for Altrincham. I think Barnet will win 4-0.
Fair enough, then. Very different contrast of scorelines. It's good for the predictions league, I suppose. But this has the making to be quite a good fixture as well. We're looking forward to watching this after the game, or on the way back, probably on the train on the way back from Oldham. But no, that more or less wraps up the predictions. Then we'll show everyone the predictions league quickly. For those who would like to subscribe, then please do. And also remember to like the podcast. If you'd like to become a channel member, it is just £2.99 in a month. You get early access to interviews and early access to other videos that we do. We've got a big interview coming out next week, specifically for any Tamworth fans who may be interested as well. There'll be more news on that very shortly. These are the scores on the doors. Paul, there's certainly an opportunity for you to maybe catch me up this game week. We've gone for some different score lines.
Yeah. We'll wait and see, Luke. There's some good fixtures in there because there's the teams that aren't really playing for anything are playing each other. So all the other fixtures, there's a team needs something. So it's a good game week, this one. I'm looking forward to this, and got to mention non-league day, Luke, isn't it? So hopefully everyone can encourage friends and family to come down and support their local non-league teams. England play tomorrow night and Monday night at Wembley, which I've got to go and suffer both of those games. So
I'm off as well.
so please, spread the word for non-league day. I know, for instance, as an example, Wealdstone are letting in Premier League and EFL season ticket holders at a reduced cost to encourage them to come. They've got family ticket pricing on. So, National Long League Day is a really good way to showcase what we believe is a brilliant part of the English football pyramid. And, it's got to be kept at all costs. And I know it's getting better and healthier with people on the terraces. We can make that even more with non-league day. And hopefully, anyone that are going to go and they've got, an interest in the home team do a bit of a turn and they can encourage people to come back.
Maybe a cliche, because we've run a podcast on the National League, and anyone who runs a podcast on a specific division is going to build it up. But let's all be honest, everyone who watches this and anyone who's got any knowledge on the National League knows that this is such a great division, and just still don't think gets the appreciation that it deserves. With some of the size that we've got in, I just love the fact you've got the likes of like a Tamworth at the moment coming up against the likes of Oldham, an ex-Premier League club. It's ridiculous, and it's such a great division, and I hope it's an opportunity for new supporters to embrace non-league, because let's be honest, in recent years, fans have started to embrace the National League and non-league as a whole more than what they were doing before. We've seen a boost overall in attendances. If you look at the attendances of the likes of Woking, Alty, how far they've grown as football clubs in the last couple of years, thanks to more fans actually appreciating non-league. Hopefully it's a great opportunity for even more clubs to actually be able to expose what they actually do, because it is such a great division. It's so unpredictable, and non-league as a whole is a great opportunity for a lot of fans because it's affordable and you still get to see some quality football as well. I've had the bug. I support Halifax Town all my life, so yeah, that tells the story anyway. But no, Paul, once again, thanks for joining me tonight, and thanks to everyone that's tuned in, and yeah, we shall see you next time. Bye for now.